Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of EOXS's Stories on Steel. This is a steel industry podcast featuring the big names of the business and the advice/stories they've accrued over their years as insiders. Steel has been a vital component in American life for well over a century, and the men and women who've helped it flourish are a diverse group of innovators full of interesting tales. We hope to share some of said tales here with you today. Special thanks to EOXS for providing this platform. In addition to this show, they are bringing businesses online by providing a standardized digital workspace for all your steel related needs. Today, we are proud to welcome the VP of Engineered Products at Chicago Tube and Iron, Mr. Steve West. Steve, welcome to the show, my friend. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Kevin. Thanks for having me. I'm kind of excited for our talk here. First time I've done something like this. So this is going to be an experience for me that it's on my bucket list. So thank you very
Well,
much.
I think you are I appreciate that, and I think you are a phenomenal liar, sir, because from our pre-show conversation, you're oozing with charisma, and I have to assume you've had a lot of media training, so you're not going to get one over on me, Mr. West.
Thank you.
All right, well, let's get into a little bit of it. We were talking about Chicago. I made fun of the Bears, as you're supposed to, and I'm sorry about that. I think the Blackhawks are fine if that helps a
That
little
helps.
bit. That helps a little bit. Are you more of a hockey guy or a baseball guy?
Well, actually, as I've gotten older, I'm not originally from Chicago.
Oh,
I grew up in the Midwest. I'm kind of an Ohio guy to some extent,
ooh,
and so
okay.
I grew up in a time when Ohio State had the phenomenal football teams with Archie Griffin and all of that. At that same time, I was a couple hours away from Indiana, where they had the basketball with the Scotty May, the Quinn Buckner era. And one of the kids I went to high school with ended up going to Notre Dame on a football scholarship. So I'm really kind of a Midwest guy, and I tend to watch people more than teams, if that makes sense.
Okay. Well, again, I swear to my bosses, we are going to get into the steel, but I have to ask. So, you say you follow people more than teams. There is one notable athlete from the Ohio area that got a lot of controversy over a decision that he made a while ago. And so I would love to know, were you okay with LeBron going to Miami, or do you wish he had stayed with the Cavs a little bit longer? He eventually came back. He made
Yeah.
good. Does but at the time, were you one of the people burning his jersey?
I was not burning his jersey. I'm a free market kind of person, and I'm all for it. If they can pay him and he can go and he can maximize his talents, I don't care what he does. I don't care if he's flipping burgers or if he's putting a ball through a hoop. I'm all for that free market kind of stuff.
You'd have to remodel the kitchen, or probably raise the ceiling a little bit if he was
A
in
little
there,
bit.
but just a little bit. But I think that is all the sports talk I've had allotted to me for this episode. Hopefully, we can chat a little bit afterwards if you have time. But we're here to talk about you and your journey into the steel industry. And I think a really good starting off point for any guest would be how you found your way into the business.
Well, it's kind of interesting. I've been in the steel industry, I feel like my entire life. I graduated from college with an engineering degree, and I went to work really in an industry that was stampings. It was a stamping industry. So we were buying steel coils, we were making parts out of that. So the first 10 years of my life was primarily manufacturing engineering roles, process engineering, project management, new product implementation in and around the stamping industry. Eventually, I moved into the manufacture of tubular products, which is cutting and bending and welding of tubular assemblies, things for ATVs, motorcycles. Again, I'm in the manufacturing engineering arena doing all that. At that time, I got involved in quoting new parts, new product implementation, and an awful lot of customer interaction. And it was just a fun time in my career. I eventually ended up running a contract manufacturing company out of Indianapolis, Indiana. Our primary focus was making tubular products for OEMs, parts, bent parts, tubes, some weldments. In 2009, I then had the opportunity to join Chicago Tube and help develop the value-added business. So basically, I've been in and around steel since the early 80s, my entire career. It's kind of continued to morph and shift a little bit, but I really like helping companies make things. I'll walk around town with my wife, and every so often I'll stop and I'll point to something and I'll say, see, I make that part. I think that's so cool. my wife thinks I'm such a nerd, but I go like, I think that's cool. I can see that side stand holding that bike up. I can see that bracket. I can see that over here. And again, I really get a charge out of making things and helping companies bring product to market.
It's really interesting because we've had engineers on the show before, and they've talked about, different, knowing that the metals they're producing and like the products they're manufacturing are going into like nuclear submarines, spaceships, aircraft, these high pressure, stress tested, like necessary components. But I really like that you're going into even broader, like everyday components that like make up everyday life for the average citizen of the world. You having a hand in that. And I think that there's nothing wrong with being awed by that reality a little bit. That component of it, was that one of the things that attracted you to the industry right out of college, or did you, when you were in college, did you know that the steel industry was where you were going to try and focus your attention?
First 2 or 3 years of college, I'm just kind of muddling my way through, taking classes, trying to get through, enjoying myself. And then about the last year and a half, started getting a little bit more serious. But I knew that from an engineering point of view, I wasn't the kind of person that wanted to sit in front of a computer and design something. I just didn't want to do that. I knew I wanted to have more people contact, and I really liked making things. So I was kind of gravitated towards the manufacturing side of things a little bit. And no, it's just my first job out of college was actually at Timken Company there in Canton, Ohio. And it was in the steel fabricating side of things and the stamping side. And that was just kind of where I started. And I really started, as I said, I fell in love with it. When I left there, went somewhere else, and I saw actual consumer products that I was making. It was no longer just like a bearing or something. It was actually consumer products that you could go over and you could see and you could touch and you could feel. And I really, really liked that. So, once I got to that point, I think I was hooked.
Okay, well, you described that you had a very specific goal from your entry into the industry, and then you found your way to Chicago. How many years in were you before you joined Chicago Tube?
Let's see. I just joined Chicago Tube. I want to say about 9 years ago.
Okay.
Maybe longer, maybe 12 years. I'm sorry, 12 years ago. About 2009 is when I joined them.
Okay.
I was running a contract manufacturing company in 2008, 2009 hit. And as we all know, all the markets, everything just kind of cratered. Everything kind of came to a stop and a standstill. At that point in Indianapolis, I was running a satellite plant, and the owners lived in Houston, Texas. They had the corporate office, and they had the main plant there in Houston. And I was running the satellite facility in Indianapolis. And things just got so bad. I remember making the call to the owner one day and saying, Ed, I think the time is right. I think we do need to close this place. I just don't see the sales coming back. I see the cost being so big. It was the hardest call I've ever made in my life because of the 40 people that worked there. I knew I was going to impact their life, and I knew I was going to impact my life. And that was a tough call to make and to be honest with the owner. And so we started a process of moving what business we had back to the Texas area and then closing that shop up. At that time, Chicago Tube was a customer of mine because I made parts for them. They were a supplier of mine because they supplied me raw material. So I knew Chicago Tube really, really well. And I had approached the sales manager out of the Indianapolis branch. I said, hey, if you know of any company that's looking or hiring at any level or whatever, just please let me know. Maybe 2 weeks later, I got a call from Chicago Tube's corporate office, wanted to talk to me. So I had a talk with them, another follow-up about a week or two later, and they made me an offer to come on board in 2009 to start helping sell value-added business with them. So it's kind of where I started with them in 2009, and over time, I got a chance to run the value-added business, which is what I'm doing right now.
Okay, so you join right after the crash. Obviously, things are very tense for everybody. And now you have a VP position within the company. So what has that journey from coming in at a very turbulent time, not just for yourself and others, but for the general global economy. How was that journey for you?
You know, when I came in, I was asked to help grow the value added business. And I realized that although there were some exceptional salespeople within the organization, that they were so used to selling a commodity, which is just raw tubing or raw pipe or whatever, that their comfort level with parts wasn't where it could be or should be. So I really think I spent the first 2 years of my life doing a lot of internal training, helping people internally understand parts. And not that they were experts, but they, kind of knew who to go to get the right answers, and that they weren't afraid of asking the questions. So, for 2 years, I did a lot of internal training. I made a lot of sales calls with customers, looking at parts that were problem parts. I mean, nobody's going to outsource a gravy part. Someone's only going to outsource a part that's difficult or having problems with. Either it's another supplier that's falling down for various reasons, or they're having capacity constraints, or whatever. So it's a matter of just talking to them about their problems. And one of the things I learned early on is the prints were easy. But the question to the customer, which is, what else do you want that's not on the print? What are the unspoken expectations? What do you need that's not on a print? How do you want it packaged? How do you want it stacked up? What really riles you? Okay, having dirt or chips in there that shouldn't be in there. Okay, what else kind of bothers you? And so it was really trying to dig down into those unspoken expectations that they needed. Even to the point with one customer, he not only wanted to put in a certain configuration, he wanted it was tubing, straight tubing with a bunch of holes put in it, and he wanted it put in 12-piece bundles. But he wanted it not 3 wide, 4 tall. He wanted it 4 wide and 3 tall, and he wanted a certain orientation. And then we had runners that we put underneath it that kind of made its own skid, and those runners had to be in a certain position. It had to be so many inches in. So I mean, sometimes we get that granular when we talk to our customers about what is it they really want, what do they really need, what's unspoken, what's beyond the print. A lot of people can read the print and they can see that hole's in this spot with this tolerance on it. That's easy, right? But what else do you need?
As someone with like that engineering background, when you do get a customer who maybe has a vague or maybe unbeknownst to them illy defined view of what they need, what is it like having to work with them to fully map out what it is they're asking for?
It's an educational process. What the one thing I find out for what we do, um, we don't want the one hit wonder. I don't want to make a part for a customer. I want to make 20 parts for a customer. I want to make 50 parts for a customer. I don't want one order of 100 pieces or 1,000 pieces. I want 1,000 orders for 100 pieces. That's going to be spread over a 3-year period or whatever it may be. So it's a growing process with them and a learning process. Invariably, you make a mistake. Something doesn't work out quite right. It's not what they wanted for whatever reason. And I've learned over the years, the simplest thing to do when you supply product that may have a quality defect, or you think it's a good part, but for whatever reason, he doesn't think it's a good part, or good, whatever. I find the simplest thing to do is say, my bad, my mistake. What do you need us to do to correct it? If you take ownership of the problem right away, rather than trying to argue, if you just take ownership of the problem, okay, you're right, we should have done better. What do you need from us now? The minute you take that ownership, you stop talking about the problem and you start talking about the solution. And that ends up being the most important thing. I mean, everything goes wrong with manufacturing all the time. I mean, you can take a look at major companies. I don't care if it's Toyota, Honda, whomever. They've got recalls, right? So something didn't go right somewhere. So everyone's got problems in manufacturing. The problem in and of itself isn't the issue. How do you respond to the problem? How do you take care of it? How do you get back on the same page? And how do you continue to be that true partner with the customer? That's what becomes really, really important.
When you do know and you are made aware of the fact that you're coming into this conversation with a lot more knowledge and technical experience than your customer, what's the process like of bringing, like, not just like solving the problems, but bringing them up to speed with what they need to know that you already know, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I think it does. You know, it's a matter of trying to find out, first of all, what I know may or may not be relevant. What does he need? What does he want? What's he looking for? So I guess I continue to ask the questions back to them. What are their expectations? What do they need? What do they want? What are their problems? Why is that a problem with it? And then I try to present I try to present solutions multiple ways rather than saying this will do it for you. I try to say, well, we can do it a couple of different ways. We can do this and this, which will have, you'll have it looking that way. We can do this and this. It's going to look that way. We can do this. It's going to cost a little bit more, but we can do this as well. Then he's part of the decision process about what to do, the solution process, and it tends to work out a little bit better. There are a lot of novices out there, if you want to say, or uninformed people. I find the engineers and the operations people are usually pretty darn good. Some purchasing people are pretty sharp. Others are just pushing paper, and it's just a piece of paper and a part number, and all I want's and so it's a matter of understanding the company's dynamics, and then figuring out who should you be talking to solve the problem. I've even find a lot of times when we have a problem with a part, it's a matter of inspection technique. You're holding it this way and you're measuring it that way, it gives you one number, but if you hold it a different way and measure it differently, you're going to get a different number. And that's because there's variance in what you're doing. So sometimes it's a matter of trying to understand how are they doing it, what tools are they using. If I'm using a caliper and they're using a coordinate measuring machine, all of a sudden the degrees of accuracy starts going up, and that may be part of the issue. So it really is just trying to get on the same page with them, trying to understand what they're doing, how they're doing it, and then listening, doing a lot more listening than talking.
So we've gone over a lot of your customer to customer interactions, but I'd love to hear some more aspects of your role as VP. That's not a role we get to flesh out a whole lot on this show. So in your own words, what exactly is under your purview?
A lot of babysitting, a lot of babysitting at times, but we have various manufacturing centers, areas within the organization, and they all report to me. So my job, it's a combination of manufacturing engineering, which would be quoting, new product introduction. It's a combination of operations. How do you make the part and get it shipped on time? And part of it is technical sales. How do you work with the sales team? How do you interact with the customers from a technical sales standpoint and get it done? I leave a lot of the price discussions strictly with the sales team and the customer, and I try to address it more from a technical sales side of things. Okay, what's needed, when, what's it look like, what do we have to do? So it's again combination of technical sales, manufacturing engineering, new product introduction, and operations, making the part and getting it out. And I have all of that kind of underneath me in one form or another.
So how long did it how long did it take you to necessarily get used to a lot of that quote unquote babysitting? I feel like for me, babysitting is making sure the dogs don't, go where they're not supposed to go.
Well, that is part of it, especially with your own team and your own employees. I think that I really did that a lot when I was in Indianapolis. I mean, that really, as being a general manager, running a complete facility, having P&L responsibility for that facility, and getting my own sales. A lot of that fell, and I started learning it there. When I came to Chicago Tube in 2009, it was really a matter of learning the lay of the land, understanding it, and then just slowly continue to evolve, identify where the shortcomings were, understand the politics, understand the environment, because every company is a little bit different. And it took a couple of years to really get very comfortable at doing it. As you can tell, I don't mind talking. So being in front of people and asking questions and talking really doesn't bother me. My skin's thick enough. I don't mind, again, when something goes wrong internally or externally, I don't mind saying, okay, my bad, what did I do? What do we need to do to fix it? In fact, that's one of my approaches. I've learned over the years, and especially the last 10 or 15, that when something doesn't happen the way I want it to, either internally or externally, if something doesn't happen the way I want to, my first thought anymore is, okay, what didn't I communicate? What didn't I make clear? You know, and I told the guy I wanted that information, but I didn't say I wanted it by Wednesday because I have a 1 o'clock meeting. Okay, so I can improve on my communication. So a lot of it is I looked at it introspectively. What can I do better? What could have I done differently? How should I have worded it so it was better understood? And taking that responsibility.
So you mentioned evolution there and talked about how, your relationship with the role has evolved, but you've had a very long time in the steel industry, and in that time, we've gotten to see a lot of other aspects of the business as well as the material itself evolve and the technology behind it. As someone with an engineering background, I'd love to know what sorts of innovations have occurred. Maybe not in your time, just in your time, because that's a very long period to go over, but maybe in the last decade, have there been a lot of advancements in the steel industry that have excited you personally?
You know, there are a couple of things. I think we're right in the middle of one right now with the digital transformation that's going on, the digital age with all that's happening there. Uh, I find that really exciting to do. I think within the steel industry itself over the last 10 years, um, I think the thing I've seen that struck me the most is it's less and less of a good old boy selling network. The days of the salesman showing up with his pad of papers and his donuts he's going to give you, and then getting the next order. That's kind of over with. The companies are really wanting to know, how can you bring value to their organization. Is it logistics? Is it making the parts for them? Is it helping with sub-assemblies? Is it kitting? Is it vendor managed inventory? Again, what can you do to help them overall? And okay, yeah, it's nice to see you, but you don't have to bring me donuts. Just make something better for me,
Well,
right?
Steve, hold on. Let's not, if they have the donuts, let's not
Well,
tell them to, we're not going to throw away the donuts. Let's just,
correct.
we're not crazy here.
That is correct. But I think what's really happening, the steel industry in general um, is changing so much, and it's basically the employment level. I mean, if you look within our organization recently, we've had a couple guys retire, and it was 2 people retired. It was 80 years of experience between them, with 2 guys. I mean, and you replace that with someone that's in their mid-20s. So um, the industry continues to get younger. I guess is what I'm trying to say. The industry is getting younger. You're getting that changeover happening, and as the employment, the average age of employee begins to fall, which is great. Now all your customers they're no longer going to want they don't mind the tickets to the ball game. But they're not going to want to go out for an hour and a half, 2-hour lunch. They got things to do. They're going to want you to communicate via email or, God forbid, text. They're going to want to see that. How do you get
one of my
your
favorite
information, your
memories.
name out there? Is it LinkedIn? Is it Facebook? Is it Instagram? How are you going to get yourself out there so people know who you are? Because they're not letting you just come in and sit around and shoot the bull for an hour.
On that technology front, though, it's really interesting because we've had several people on the show that have remarked either on camera or afterwards that their businesses still use fax machines. Like there's still a designated use for fax machines, and that just blew me away.
We've got a fax machine in the office. I can't tell you the last time I saw something come across that fax machine. It'd be years.
Yeah.
From the last time I saw it. Now, I think from a credit standpoint, the credit people like faxes. But from my customers and the drawings and all that, it's not faxes anymore. It's it's PDFs and it's email and stuff coming. Heck, I'm even finding out if I've got a really sensitive project going on and it's very, very time sensitive, I'm texting my customers. I mean, it's a Saturday morning at 9 o'clock in the morning, and we had a project, and I was texting the customer. I said, "Hey, John, I just wanted to bring you up to date. Here's what happened. We got, we promised we get X and Y, Z done, and we did. We're on schedule. Looks like we're gonna have a good week this week." And it was a text message, and wasn't a phone call, wasn't an email. It was just a simple text message. So I don't see fax machines again. I think our credit department still uses it and I think they got specific reasons for it, so that their data can't be digitally transformed or something. But other than that, I don't know of anybody in our company that uses faxes anymore. I'm surprised people still say that, because I'm just amazed.
I mean, I think that there are always going to be aspects of any industry that, are slower to change than others. And I don't necessarily see that as a bad thing as much as a reality in a lot of cases.
Mhm.
If that's a way that a lot of people are used to communicating, then I think making them comfortable by communicating in that way with them in that way is fine. But I don't know if I have it in me to learn how to use a fax machine. I was sort of the last generation where it's like, yeah, that's out the door, like pagers came and went in my time. So,
Yeah, pagers,
so,
fax machines used to be so cool. I remember early in my career, used to just put it in a FedEx package and send it through FedEx. They'll have it in 2 days. And
oh
then
yeah.
it went from that to faxing to get it there almost instantly, to now drawings are set up on the cloud. You can go pull them down if you want to, if they're too big to email, type of thing. So yeah.
Well, I think that's definitely an interesting note to end that on. But you talked about the digital revolution a little bit. And I wanted to go specifically before we're running up on time right now. So I wanted to get your thoughts on specifically that digital marketplace. There's currently a big demand for steel coming out of
Mhm.
the pandemic. There was a lull, and now it's an absolute uh, chaotic situation in the market. Do you think that the digital marketplace has any role in managing that demand?
Yeah, I think some. I think where you're going to see the digital role is not so much in the next 12 months. I think you're going to be looking. The steel industry by nature is cyclical. The marketplaces are cyclical. You get really busy times and it gets a little bit slower. Then you get busy times, it gets a little bit slower. I think what you find right now with what's going on, there's just so much happening, um, that um, there's so many shortages. I mean, the auto industry's got chip shortages of all things, right? And they can't ship their products because they don't have chips to put in their cars. But the steel supplies are very, very tight right now. And with that, you're managing it, and a lot of phone calls, a lot of things going on. I think as you hit that curve and the peak and starts coming back down here in another 12 to 18 to 24 months, you're going to see the digital area playing a significantly bigger role. But right now, it's just triage. Right now, and it's going to continue to be triage for the next 6 months, maybe a little bit longer. But you get through that, and now you got that whole digital thing. I know a lot of companies are even struggling with how to sell. I mean, during this pandemic, who whose salesman can go in and see customers on an ongoing regular basis? So now how do you communicate? And it's more than just Zoom meetings. How do you communicate and do a tour? How do you communicate your new products, your new capabilities? And so how do you use, is LinkedIn the right tool? Is Facebook, is Instagram? I know me personally, I tend to look at Facebook and Instagram more as a personal social media, and LinkedIn more of a professional one. But I was having a discussion with somebody even on Friday, and they thought that those lines continue to get blurred, and that Instagram is going to be just as important as LinkedIn for industrial selling going forward.
All right. Well, Steve, we're coming up on time. I just wanted to say thank you so much for all of these amazing insights and stories. Hopefully, we can have you back at some point in the future, because it seems like we have a lot more to talk about than the current confines of the time would allow. So, really hope we could have you back.
I'd appreciate that, Kevin. Thank you very much for your time.
All right. And to everybody listening and watching, thank you for your time as well. This has been another insightful episode of EOXS's Stories on Steel. Thanks again to Steve for stopping by. And remember, whether galvanized or hot rolled, EOXS will provide a digital marketplace to take any steel business to the online sector. Thank you and good night.